economics in a minute. But first, the gap between what America brings in and what it spends is at its least terrifying level in 5 years. There's news the deficit has dropped below $1 trillion, which hasn't happened since 2008. The deficit is now $680.3 billion, if you like significant digits. Marketplace's David Weinberg is here live with some context.
So we got to this 5-year low partly because more people are working, so that's more tax revenue. And remember all those across-the-board spending cuts that were part of sequestration? That helped reduce things on the spending side. So here's where you might be wondering why it's good for the U.S. to reduce its deficit. Well, keeping that deficit low, it's key to maintaining the U.S.'s good credit rating. And we rely on that good credit to borrow money so we can pay our bills. And the better our credit, the lower our interest rates. In fact, the Congressional Budget Office predicts that the interest payments on our debt alone will exceed $5 trillion over the next 10 years. That's more than 14% of all the revenue the U.S. is expected to take in that decade.
Marketplace's David Weinberg, thank you very much. Now let's check some stock numbers, okay? After the Dow fell 61 points, 0.4% yesterday, stock index futures in the U.S. are down again now. The FT 100 in London is down 0.4%. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong fell 0.1%. Now here's a early news flash. The economy of Nigeria will grow by 40% on December the 10th. Well, that's not actually wrong, technically. Nigeria, the most populous country in sub-Saharan Africa, is overhauling the way it calculates gross domestic product, or GDP, to make it more up-to-date. So will this help business and or the people of Nigeria? Marketplace's Mitchell Hartman reports.
I provide everything we need as a family.
That's one of the things that will boost Nigeria's new GDP figure. TV and movies from Nollywood, the Nigerian Hollywood, that are exported across Africa. Fast-growing telecommunications will also help Nigeria catch up to South Africa, its biggest economic rival. But Hossein Asghari at George Washington University says GDP doesn't make much difference. Foreign investors focus on infrastructure and rule of law.
Nigeria is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. There are internal conflicts, and there is a very, very large degree of poverty.
South Africa has a bigger middle class and better legal institutions, says Amadou Sy at the Brookings Institution.
South Africa remains very important, but it's good to have also another champion.
For a continent that by 2050 will have a larger share of world population than China or India. I'm Mitchell Hartman for Marketplace.
Do you enjoy the music we play between stories? Visit the Marketplace Music section to browse playlists for all of our programs and to buy those songs on Amazon. A percentage of each purchase goes towards supporting our programs. Find more online at marketplace.org/music.
In the new month on the way, some big-name technology companies plan to jump into the renewed push to overhaul American immigration law. Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg, along with people from LinkedIn, Groupon, Dropbox, are part of something to be called the Dreamers Hackathon. It's an event designed to connect people who came to the U.S. illegally as children with technology tools and projects to help them push for changes to immigration law. For more on this, let's turn to Stephen Keppel, who covers economics for Spanish-language Univision News. Morning, Stephen.
Good morning, David.
So give me a sense of why you think these tech companies would get involved.
There are a lot of immigrants in Silicon Valley. More than half of Silicon Valley startups have at least one immigrant as founder. This is definitely one of the reasons behind their success. You know, there's a lot of different ideas, and there's this really entrepreneurial spirit as well, especially for groups like Facebook and maybe LinkedIn. This is definitely great marketing and great business. Latinos are using social media at higher rates than any other group in the country. They're already a big bloc, and they're, the fastest growing demographic.
And what makes this particularly interesting is that traditionally you'd see tech companies focusing mainly on changing the immigration rules, reforming the immigration rules for more highly skilled and educated workers from overseas, engineers coming in from India, for instance. But this effort at hand seems to go beyond that.
Yeah, it does. I think it's something that's been recent to the last year or two where in some senses they just decided that you you can't just go for this one section and say, hey, we're only for highly skilled immigrants. The rest of them, forget about it. And I think their message will resonate much more because it's more inclusive than being just specifically to, the highly skilled immigrants that work in their companies.
So, Mr. Zuckerberg at Facebook, and you have some of these other brand names, Groupon, LinkedIn, and so forth. These are significant companies with influence. Do you think this initiative has the capacity to move the needle at all on immigration reform?
It'll be interesting to see how it goes, but I don't think a whole lot is going to change in Washington. A lot of polls show that young people are for immigration reform, but not a whole lot of people are doing anything about it. You have, some groups of immigrants, specifically the Dreamers, who have been very active and have been very savvy in the digital space. I think these companies maybe have seen that, or they've seen some other things that have worked, and they're saying, like, all right, how do we engage people? They may be able to lay the groundwork for the future of social action in this country, utilizing what they know best, digital media, social media.
Stephen Keppel covers economics for Univision. Stephen, thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
And some people who write reviews for free on Yelp, the restaurant and local commerce app, are suing to get paid. Yelp will point out that these are volunteers who should have known what they were getting into. But the class action suit references a description of Yelp as a, quote, 21st century galley slave ship with pirates banging the drum to keep up the fast pace to fill the pockets of stockholders with treasure, unquote. The suit also alleges that some of Yelp's social media reward system is cult-like, awarding digital trinkets, badges, and praise. Yelp calls the whole thing frivolous. In New York, I'm David Brancaccio with the Marketplace Morning Report. From 8 p.m., American Public Media.
Everybody keep back! I'll kill her! I'll kill her! Keep back!
Oh, be careful. You're going to hurt somebody with that thing.
Inside Obamacare website tests.
Pretty much everybody involved thought the testing was an abysmal failure.
Boston brings home the World Series title.
Yeah! Red Sox! Yeah!
Court battle over pop hit. Good morning. I'm Steve Kathan with the CBS World News Roundup. We're getting a closer look at the website testing in the run-up to the Obamacare rollout 4 weeks ago from government employees who were part of it all.
We've learned that the website failed with just a small test pool of 200 to 300 people. One source told us it was unequivocally clear from the testing this wasn't ready.
CBS's Cheryl Atkinson.
Some of the employees that were involved in the testing just assumed with things that bad, not long before the October 1st launch, that at least perhaps they had helped identify some problems and that they would be fixed. But clearly, when October 1st came and members of the public had the exact same experience, it appears that the problems hadn't been resolved.
I'm Peter Mayer, live at the White House. President Obama is trying to resolve the meaning of his key promise in the health care reform debate.
If you like your current insurance, you will keep your current insurance.
But with tens of thousands of people now being forced out of their current coverage, the president, for the first time, has acknowledged what he describes as bad apple policies are being canceled for
fewer than 5% of Americans who've got cut-rate plans that don't offer real financial protection.
And in Boston yesterday, Steve, he urged those people to
just shop around in the new marketplace. That's what it's for.
Well, CBS's Jan Crawford has a look at state websites. Many, but not all, have been running smoother, but there's been a price to pay.
A CBS News analysis shows that the 15 states that opted to set up their own exchanges are spending more than $1.1 billion to launch and implement their own Obamacare websites, often paying the same government contractors to do the same job in different states.
New York's website has had a glitch that sent some callers to Gus Rodriguez's Brooklyn Cupcake Shop.
They're just as surprised about us being a cupcake shop as we are surprised about them asking us about health care.
The site also blames the federal government for some of its other problems. Now to Boston, where the Red Sox won baseball's World Series with a 6-1 Game 6 win over St. Louis, a title a year after a last-place finish. CBS's Steve Futterman's in Boston.
It was a night Red Sox fans had been waiting for 95 years.
I feel amazing!
The last time the Red Sox won the World Series at home was in 1918. Last night's win was decisive. Boston took control early. 3 runs in the third, 3 more in the fourth. When the moment came,
swing and a miss, he struck him out!
Fenway Park erupted in celebration. Boston manager John Farrell.
This team has got its place in history, and to have it culminate in this, it's truly special.
Amidst the celebration, the tragedy in April, the Boston Marathon bombing was not forgotten, even by the series' most valuable player, David Ortiz.
You know, this is a city that we've been through a lot of situations.
Last night, Boston Strong became Boston's strongest. Steve Futterman, CBS News at the World Series in Boston.
NSA Director General Keith Alexander denies a Washington Post report that says the agency tapped into Google and Yahoo data centers.
We are not authorized to go into a U.S. company's servers and take data. We have to go through a court process for doing that.
The report cited information from NSA leaker Edward Snowden. An official with a chemical weapons watchdog group says Syria has completed the destruction of the equipment used to make chemical weapons. The deadline is tomorrow. Here at home, an assessment of Washington's Syria policy.
I'd say U.S. policy towards Syria for the last 2 years has been a mess.
Leslie Gelb of the Council on Foreign Relations will testify today before a Senate committee.
What's going to happen is that this war will drag on forever, and the costs in human lives and suffering will be even more enormous.
In Africa, an official says 92 bodies have been found in northern Niger, a truckload of migrants stranded in the broiling desert heat. New University of California President Janet Napolitano is setting aside $5 million to aid students who are living in this country illegally.
This is a $24+ billion budget. So if you're making your money work for you and you're really being careful, you can identify some discrete pockets of funds.
The move does blunt critics who feared the former Homeland Security Secretary would be hostile to illegal immigrants. Some people had to be rescued from their flooded homes in the Austin, Texas area. Heavy rains expected to pound parts of the state for a second day today, and a storm system in the nation's midsection is headed east. In a few hours, the FAA is expected to loosen restrictions on personal electronic devices on commercial flights, iPads and similar devices, not cell phones. New York City, already home to the highest cigarette tax in the country, has now moved to ban tobacco sales to people under 21. The federal minimum is 18. City Councilman Jim Gennaro sponsored the bill the mayor is expected to sign into law.
Most of the people who buy cigarettes for kids who are under 18 are below 21. So I think this is going to have a great effect for people who are less than 18-year-olds in keeping cigarettes from them.
Across the country, millions of kids have their costumes ready and are all set to collect bags of Halloween candy. A social media question kicking up a stir. Is this the night to make a point about childhood obesity?
It's one of the funnest kid things you can do. But what a North Dakota woman plans to pass out could leave many feeling like,
I got her raw. I just feel like parents should take more responsibility for their kids to becoming little fat kids.
That's Cheryl, who plans to hand notes to trick-or-treaters she thinks are chubby, telling their parents their child appears moderately obese and they should ration candy.
Actually looking at diabetes and just all kinds of health problems.
The reaction on social media, similar to what her neighbors in Fargo think.
It's nobody's business, really.
It seems inappropriate to me.
Heather Bosch, CBS News.
On the Health Watch, a new government report on hypertension.
Chances are you or someone you know has high blood pressure.
1 in 3 people have hypertension.
Tatiana Walkwill with the CDC says people are doing a better job of treating their hypertension. About 76% of people with high blood pressure are currently taking medication. But she says that's not enough.
And we still need to basically put our efforts in having people have their blood pressure under control.
Sabrina Gibbons for CBS News, Atlanta.
Blurred Lines is one of this year's biggest hit songs. But is it a ripoff of this? The late Marvin Gaye's 2 children think it is and are suing Robin Thicke and his Blurred Lines collaborators for copyright infringement. Music industry attorney Doug Mark.
I hear Blurred Lines, and I absolutely hear Got to Give It Up. It's what I think of. But are there substantially similar compositional elements?
He says it may not be similar enough to make the case. A new member of the United States Senate is sworn in today. Here's Capitol Hill correspondent Bob Fuss.
Vice President Joe Biden will swear in New Jersey Democrat Cory Booker, who will fill out the Senate term of the longtime Democratic Senator Frank Lautenberg, who died in office. Booker, the mayor of Newark, who easily won a special election earlier this month, stands out among politicians, in part for his hands-on approach to governing, which has included shoveling snow when a city resident asked for help, inviting Hurricane Sandy victims into his house, and once running into a burning home to rescue one of his constituents. Bob Fuss, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
The National Zoo in Washington now says the mother of the giant panda cub born in August is spending more time away from her offspring.